Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. An exclusive story. 3 former Windsor police officers are speaking out about poor working conditions, with the union saying an unprecedented number of officers left last year. Plus, a project aimed at preventing further erosion of a local island has been successful. We speak with the group behind the efforts and a trip down memory lane. Windsor Morning gets a lesson on why recorders are still used in schools. The union representing Windsor police officers say the number of cops that left last year is unprecedented. CBC News spoke with some former officers who say poor morale and a lack of support are some of the big issues. Windsor Police Service saying it doesn't have a retention problem and that employee wellness is on the up. The CBC's Jason Vio brings us the exclusive story.
3 Windsor police officers who left in the last few years tell CBC News they quit because of a variety of internal problems they say weren't getting addressed. We aren't revealing their identities as they fear retaliation or reprisal, but here's some of what they told us. Morale was at an all-time low. There just aren't enough cops on the road. We've been asked to do more with less for years, and at some point, there is a breaking point. Another officer says, what's the point? I can go do this job somewhere else for the same pay in a different city, or I can get out of policing altogether, making more money with much less stress. It wears you down. Last year, the number of calls police responded to in Windsor went up significantly. There were more than 149,000 calls for service in 2023. That's compared to an average of 121,000 calls for service for each year over the last 4. But the number of frontline officers isn't keeping pace. There were 296 active cops in Windsor last year compared to 304 in 2019. That's according to data obtained by CBC News through a Freedom of Information request. The Windsor Police Association says this means officers are responding to back-to-back calls that makes them feel unsafe because there aren't enough of them on the road. And the officers who spoke with CBC say that leads to missing lunches, being overworked, and burning out. One officer says there's often a call backlog when they start their shift, sometimes 4 calls in the queue or more than 50 waiting.
The burnout's a factor. Let's be honest, burnout's a factor with people. Do I believe morale is an issue at Windsor Police Service? I do. I speak to my members daily, and they've echoed that to me loudly. They need to feel valued. They need to feel that they are safe, and they need to feel that their input is desired.
Rice says 12 officers left last year and 2 so far this year. He calls that unprecedented because historically, officers who were hired in Windsor stayed until retirement. The Windsor Police Service said Chief Jason Belair wasn't available for an interview, but a spokesperson says they are not currently facing member retention challenges, and the number of officers who left is consistent with what we've seen in previous years.
There's been changes, but that conversation, that move of the needle per se for the membership hasn't been significant enough.
In a separate statement to CBC News, Chief Belair said member wellness is a key priority. He says, quote, "We have established a holistic suite of programs and initiatives to foster wellness and positive morale in our workforce." Belair points to the Peer Support Unit, the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, the Leadership Development Program, and the Early Intervention Program, which identifies employees who may need support from the Health and Wellness Coordinator. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkins, chair of the Police Services Board, said through a spokesperson that he's unavailable during the 3 days leading up to the publication of this story. The officers who spoke with CBC News say it doesn't appear administration and the board are focused on addressing these issues. One former Windsor cop said, "Going into the job, I didn't expect a lot of public support, but I at least expected support from our leadership. I found that usually wasn't the case. Their focus seems to be more on catering to social media and less on solving problems." Ultimately, the officers who are speaking out are doing so, they say, to hopefully improve the environment for their former colleagues who still work there. They're not doing this for the money, they're doing it for the community, even if it doesn't seem that way, one former officer said. Another former Windsor cop says, "I want change. I want Windsor Police to be better. I feel like we have great people who work there, but they are going to continue to lose great people." Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
You can read much more on Jason's story by heading to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. That includes more from the former officers who spoke with CBC News, extended video from the Windsor Police Association, and additional information from Chief Jason Belair. A Canadian truck driver was in a Detroit courthouse today. The driver allegedly tried to bring 290 kilograms of cocaine across the Ambassador Bridge. Court documents said the transport truck driver was instructed to pull over under the bridge, but ignored the request and tried to continue to the tolls. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers noticed the seal on the trailer doors did not match the seal on the paperwork. And a search of the trailer resulted in the discovery of about $8.7 million worth of cocaine. The commercial truck was hauling agricultural equipment. The future of Pesh Island shoreline is looking a bit brighter. A project aimed at preventing further erosion has been a success. The CBC's TJ Deere speaks with the group behind the efforts.
These rock berms are holding back waves from the Detroit River.
We really wanted to create this calm water area to reduce the wave energy that's really eroding the island and making chunks of it fall into the river.
They're serving to protect Pesh Island from erosion, and according to the Detroit River Canadian Cleanup, or DRCC, the area of the island decreased by about 16% between 1931 and 2015. They did the work to install the berms, 9 of which were laid in the river in 2021 and 2022. The rocks act as armor to shelter the island,
to sort of decrease the wave energy that area has been experiencing due to Detroit River currents, as well as recent high water level events that we've experienced, and the freighter waves that pass by.
Saran says the berms are also allowing aquatic life to thrive.
We're seeing submerged aquatic vegetation, which we didn't have in the area before, really established. And so in high wave environments, this aquatic vegetation can't establish because it just gets kind of taken downstream by the waves and currents. And so we are seeing that submerged aquatic vegetation established as a result of the projects behind these islands.
As a result, Saran says 35 different types of fish have used the area, including a species at risk.
This area here is critical habitat for the northern mad toms, which is endangered. And so this area in particular has been identified as critical for its recovery. And so as part of this project, we kind of tried to target the northern mad tom and try to improve habitat for it.
The Essex Region Conservation Authority, which also plays a role on the DRCC, says the berms have a 50-year lifespan. The organization's Director of Conservation Services told us he believes it'll be hard to know what the river will look like at that point. Saran says the DRCC now plans to build 6 rock berms to prevent erosion around Fighting Island back there. She says that project is expected to be completed by 2026 at the earliest. TJ Deere, CBC News, LaSalle.
The federal government announced new money today to fight auto theft, $28 million to beef up border inspection. It comes ahead of a summit on the problem tomorrow with senior ministers, police chiefs, and city mayors meeting. CBC's Kate McKenna reports.
It's been a couple of months, but Chris Coyer still has trouble believing his vehicle was stolen from his driveway.
They say you go through stages of grief, and I think I went through them all with the car. I was shocked, and then I was mad, and then I was, sad and in tears. I went through it all.
He's one of tens of thousands of Canadians who've lost their vehicles recently. Car thefts like this one in broad daylight are happening in record numbers, a situation some industry insiders call a national crisis.
We've been hearing that another record is going to be broken in 2023. So 2022 was the first year on record that insurance losses were over $1 billion. 2023 is on track to break that even still.
But Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says the federal government has been asleep at the wheel. He says he's got a plan which includes increasing mandatory jail time for thieves and buying scanners to check if stolen vehicles are inside shipping crates.
Our common sense plan to put the brakes on car theft is to secure our ports and lock up the car thieves.
A new announcement from Ottawa today suggests the Liberals may have been listening.
Today, I'm pleased to announce an additional investment of $28 million to bolster the Canada Border Services Agency's ability to detect and search containers with stolen vehicles.
I would like to see things stepped up somewhat, something put in place to help a little more with the recovery.
Chris Coyer says he wants federal leaders to take this issue as seriously as he has, bumping up his own protection so his new car doesn't suffer the same fate. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
If you grew up in Windsor, Essex County, you were probably taught how to play the recorder at some point. An instrument I know my parents certainly cringed at when I brought home, painstakingly listening to songs like Old MacDonald and Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. But why years later, in a world transfixed on things like coding and artificial intelligence, are students still learning how to play the recorder? Windsor Morning host Amy Dodge wanted to find out.
What it does is it helps your fine motor skills. So, because you're playing the recorder, you have to really have the proper positioning of your fingers to go on the holes, and you can't just slap them down. They have to go on properly. So, if you switch to a clarinet or a saxophone, you have to make sure your hands are in the right position as well, and you're not just slapping them down all over the place. They have to be in the precise moment.
So, what's the first song that you teach? I mean, I think Three Blind Mice is really the only thing I remember, but is there something that you usually start with that's easier to learn the fundamentals?
What I do myself is I teach some harmony first. So what I'll do is I'll split the kids up into groups, and basically if you're playing one note and I'm playing a different note using a chord, and there's 3 groups, I'll be using a triad, they play together and they instantly hear 3 notes at the same time.
Okay, can we do something
Sure.
together?
So if you have your thumb here,
Yeah.
yep, and then your first finger down, this is your B. So if you go ahead and play that.
B. I'm
Yeah,
learning notes
okay,
on the recorder.
okay. And then if you play and I play at the same time, it'll harmonize. So instantly they immediately hear the chords and they're like, oh, this is fun. And then I slowly get into reading
This
the notes.
is fun. What's the next one?
The next one will be A.
Okay, so if I play A and you play something else?
I'll play a C. Yep.
Can we do the 2 together?
Yeah,
the
sure.
B, A? Okay. That was great. Mike, what do you think? Do you think we pass for some type of band over here? Oh, he says maybe.
There was perhaps more polished musical content on the morning show today. That was in the form of Windsor country performer Kelsey Main. She's getting set to perform at the Coliseum at Caesars Windsor on March 8th. The former University of Windsor track and field star turned country music singer will open for Russell Dickerson. One number she'll be performing is her song Surrender, a song she says is for her upcoming wedding. She spoke with Windsor Morning host Amy Dodge.
My song Surrender, and I wrote that years ago, and now I had no idea it was going to be my wedding song, so there you go.
And you'll be playing that at Caesars?
I will. It was just released on last Friday, and I have a music video for it coming out on the 12th, and then I'll be playing it at Caesars. Man, this is a dream come true for me. I just saw Diana Ross there in the summer, and to now be on that stage is really cool.
How did you tag along with Russell?
So I actually met him back in 11 years ago, I think, and this was at the Bull and Barrel, where he was actually opening for someone else, another act called the Eden's Edge, and they're no longer a band anymore, but he's stuck with it 11 years later. I was a server at that point, and I was singing sometimes on stage, and then when I saw that they were coming through, I messaged the owners and I said, hey, can I open for him? And then they approved it, so I got to open for him. He was my very first artist I ever got to open for. And
this is like Coyote Ugly Windsor edition.
It was. I was their house singer, and then now I get to play the Coliseum with him on March 8th. So.
Another beautiful day in Windsor, Essex, and do I ever love to see brighter skies sticking around longer and longer. We have your full weather forecast coming up after the break. Depending on who you talk to, Windsor has a goose problem. Well, in Toronto, it's a pigeon problem. The bird's population is out of control. Now the city is fighting back, putting the pigeons on birth control. Anam Khan explains how it works.
Pigeons in Toronto, a particular nuisance in the Yonge and Finch intersection, where they target restaurants, streets, and even people.
They're out of control. They're always watching, like keeping an eye on us, like who's my victim today.
It's been quite difficult to deal with the mess they make.
It's prompted some residents to install screens and spikes, but the problem continues. Joe Lee has fond memories of the birds back home in Hong Kong.
We eat the baby pigeon there, very yummy.
But even he is disgusted by this mess.
I don't like it.
So how do we reduce the number of pigeons and do it in a humane way? Well, the city put them on the pill for a pilot project last year, and it was deemed successful, so it's back on this year's proposed budget.
There's hope in the battle against pigeon poop.
Yonge and Finch is in Councillor Lily Chang's ward. She's asking the city to include Willowdale in the project.
Some people were saying my balcony is taken over by pigeon poop.
So how does this method work? Bird feeders are laced with birth control for birds, already set up on rooftops in 4 locations across the city, one soon to be added downtown. Toronto's chief veterinarian says the method is more humane than a popular alternative, where pest control companies use poisons and trappings to kill the birds.
The pigeon population is feral. There is a small wild population, but mostly it's feral domestic pigeons. There's also, we've put in a bylaw to limit the number of pigeons that people can have in Toronto.
It's worked for Vancouver's transit system. They used it on and off along the SkyTrain system since 2019.
Things have just kind of remained steady since we've introduced the birth control program.
And it seems to be working here too. Toronto has already seen a decrease in the number of pigeons, and coming this summer, we'll get a better picture. Excuse me, how do you feel about going on birth control? Anam Khan, CBC News, Toronto.
Another beautiful day in Windsor, Essex. Victor Paulo is here with our weather forecast.
Windsor, hope you're having yourselves a beautiful day. Well, taking a look at some headlines, it's going to be a bit of cloud cover overnight tonight, but once that cloud cover is all said and done, we're heading ourselves into some double-digit highs. We're expecting the highs to be around 11 degrees tomorrow, feeling like +10. Now, that's not bad for the beginning of February. Now, we do have some precipitation heading our way, and that precipitation is not going to be that much. We're expecting about 2 millimeters to fall. Now, speaking of temperatures, your average high is -0.5, and your average low is -7.8. And then taking a quick look at the long-range forecast, well, you're going to see a lot of warmer temperatures. That's why you see a lot of light green towards the Windsor area. But as we get closer towards the end of the weekend and towards the middle of next week, you'll see a lot more blue sneaking into there. Now, what does that mean? That means we're expecting temperatures to drop down closer to more seasonal winter-like temperatures for the Windsor area, much different than what we're going to be experiencing tomorrow. Before we get tomorrow, let's talk about tonight, where it's going to be a low. It's going to be feeling around 1 degree. It's going to feel closer to -3, and we're going to be seeing a bit of cloud cover, as you do see behind me. Now, when we're detecting a bit of precipitation, when is it going to all start? Well, it's majority of that precipitation for the Windsor area will be starting close to your overnight Thursday into Friday morning. And then as you get into Friday, there'll be a little bit more rain passing by and even some more scattered showers on your Saturday. But in total, expecting about 2 millimeters for Friday and about another millimeter or so for Saturday. But taking a big look at a bird's eye view as to what's going on in the Windsor area, well, this is that increased cloud cover we're going to be seeing for our overnight into Thursday. But before we get there, let's talk about tomorrow morning, where we're little ones and my little ones are getting ready for school. It's going to be a mix of sun and cloud, 3 degrees, feeling like -1 with a mix of sun and cloud. And taking a look at our 3- and 7-day forecast, well, we do have some warmer days ahead of us. High of 11 degrees on Thursday, high of 11 degrees on Friday. We're expecting a bit of precipitation, as mentioned, both towards your Friday morning and on Saturday as well, but of the scattered variety. No big heavy systems working its way through, but you do see the temperatures start to drop as we do get closer to Wednesday. But let's not get all the way there, because we've got a beautiful day expected tomorrow. Hope you all have yourselves a great night, Windsor. Over to you.
Thanks for that, Victor. We have some good news about a pod of orcas who are fighting for their life. More on that coming up. An interprovincial trade spat is pouring across the border between British Columbia and Alberta. The wine war centers on old trade rules, and it's leaving wine producers with a bad taste in their mouths. CBC's Brady Strachan reports.
So rosé has been a feature at Costco in Alberta.
It's taken decades for Quailsgate Winery to establish its brand with Albertan wine lovers. But now the West Kelowna winery has been abruptly cut off. Notice given in this letter that Alberta will no longer accept shipments of their wine.
We're being strong-armed into this position by using one lever to get another one.
A blow for the winery, which ships $100,000 worth of wholesale wine each month to Alberta. Quailsgate is just one of the BC wineries affected. They all ship directly to their wine club members, something Alberta says is not allowed. Alberta's alcohol regulator declined an interview, directing CBC News to a statement that said direct-to-consumer shipping was impacting the dollars that support projects and services Albertans rely on. This industry consultant says the issue boils down to antiquated regulations.
So it seems kind of crazy in Canada that it's easier to import wine to Alberta from France or California than it is from British Columbia or Ontario.
This sudden move by Alberta has left the wine industry scrambling, and the BC government is working to stop the blockade.
Really hard to understand why Alberta would choose this moment to go after BC wineries. I know my colleague, Minister Mike Farnworth, has reached out to his counterpart in Alberta to discuss this.
It's not the first time Alberta has cut off the flow of BC wine. In 2018, the province stopped imports over a pipeline expansion dispute with BC. The BC wine industry says disputes like this hurt their business and consumers.
Alberta is clearly the second biggest market for BC wineries. A lot of them are long-standing consumers and customers, wine club members.
Merlot, Syrah.
Alberta's regulator told winemakers it would lift the ban if they agreed to stop shipping directly to Alberta consumers, something this winery is considering. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
A unique painting was sold at an auction recently, and it took a long and winding road from its creation in 1966. Bearing its 4 artist signatures, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Yes, the Beatles painted this in a Tokyo hotel room. Each painted a quadrant, and they signed it in the center where a lamp had sat while they worked. Big Beatles fans thinking of purchasing, you're going to have to fork out $1.74 million, and that's US. Leaving you tonight with a good news story about a pod of orcas. They've been trapped in sea ice for the past 2 days, but were able to free themselves. More than a dozen orcas were discovered stuck in pack ice off northern Japan on Tuesday. They were crowded together, sharing one opening in the ice about 1 kilometer from shore. The orcas were spotted by fishermen and reported to local officials who checked on the pod. When the officials returned this morning, the orcas were gone. It's believed they were able to escape as more openings in the ice developed. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. And don't forget to watch The National tonight at 9 on CBC News Network, 10 p.m. on the CBC News app, CBC TV, and streaming on CBC Gem and CBC Explore. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.